You think your life is falling apart, and you don't just think it, you feel it in your chest. Plans unravel. People leave without warning. Opportunities disappear the moment you reach for them. Every time you try to take a step forward, something pulls you 2 steps back. It starts to feel personal, as if life itself is working against you. You look around and wonder what went wrong, not just with your choices, but with you. The silence gets heavier, the questions louder. And in that quiet desperation, one thought echoes louder than the rest. Nothing is working. But what if I told you that everything is working, just not in the way you expected? We're wired to associate discomfort with danger, rejection with failure, delay with punishment. When something doesn't go our way, we panic, because the human mind, conditioned by survival and trained by fear, can't distinguish between a closed door and a divine detour. We've been taught to worship control, to trust only what we can see, measure, predict. But the truth is, the most important things in your life, your growth, your transformation, your breakthrough, won't come with a roadmap. They'll come disguised as chaos. Napoleon Hill knew this well. He said, "Every adversity, every failure, every heartache carries with it the seed of an equal or greater benefit." But here's the problem. You can't see the seed when you're still bleeding. You can't recognize the blessing when you're obsessed with how it should have looked. And that's where most people stay stuck, in the illusion of failure. The illusion is powerful. It tells you you're losing everything, when in truth, you're being stripped of what no longer serves your destiny. It convinces you that you've hit the bottom, when really, the ground is being cleared for something new. Your mind screams, "This isn't how it was supposed to go." But your soul whispers, "This is the only way it could have gone." There's a kind of breakdown that doesn't mean collapse. It means reorganization. But because it hurts, we label it as punishment. We rush to fix what's falling, not realizing that some things are meant to fall. Some things are out of alignment, not because they're bad, but because you've grown, and your soul is no longer willing to carry what your ego still clings to. Let me ask you something. How many times have you prayed for clarity, for purpose, for strength? Did you really think the answer would come wrapped in comfort? Clarity comes when your illusions break. Purpose emerges when the distractions fall away. Strength is born when there's nothing left to lean on, except yourself. Here's a hard truth most won't say out loud. What you're calling everything going wrong might be the exact sequence required to break the shell around your next level. It's not destruction, it's preparation. Think of a seed. Before it becomes a tree, it breaks, it disintegrates, underground, in darkness, with no audience, no applause. From the outside, it looks like death, but from the inside, it's transformation. You are that seed. And right now, it's dark, it's confusing, it's painful, but you are not dying, you are becoming. That job that slipped away, it was misaligned with who you're evolving into. That relationship that collapsed, it was holding together a version of you that's no longer alive. That opportunity that disappeared, it was too small for what you're about to carry. Life removes what's comfortable to make room for what's correct. But here's the challenge. The correction rarely feels good in real time. It often feels like loss, like betrayal, like failure, because your nervous system is screaming for the familiar, even when the familiar is toxic. You begin to grieve what was, even if what was killing you slowly. This is the moment you have to make a decision. Will you panic, or will you trust? Will you fight to rebuild what's crumbling, or will you stand in the rubble and look for the foundation of something new? Most people won't. Most people will retreat. They'll beg for what broke to come back. They'll try to glue together pieces that no longer fit. They'll spend years chasing closure from things that were never meant to last. And in doing so, they'll miss the miracle of the rearrangement. Because yes, life is rearranging. Quietly, fiercely, perfectly. There are conversations happening behind closed doors right now that will benefit you, and you don't even know it. There are people leaving your life, making space for others to enter. There are ideas forming in your mind that wouldn't have existed if you hadn't been forced into stillness. There is order in the chaos, but it's not the order your ego recognizes. It's the order your soul has been waiting for, and the moment you stop labeling it as failure, you start seeing the truth. Nothing is breaking. Everything is shifting, and the shift is happening for you. But what does it look like to trust the shift when you still feel like you're falling? If something in this message hit home for you, let me know in the comments. Your story matters here. And if you felt seen, subscribe so we can keep growing together. You weren't born to live a painless life. You were born to grow, and growth is not a gentle process. It's uncomfortable. It's disorienting. It's breaking you apart just enough to rebuild you stronger. But no one tells you this when you're in the middle of it, when the nights are long, when your chest feels tight, when your thoughts keep spiraling and all you want is for the pain to stop. No one tells you that this is where strength is born, because it doesn't feel like strength. It feels like drowning. Pain has a language of its own, and if you don't know how to listen to it, you'll think it's your enemy. But pain isn't trying to destroy you. It's trying to redirect you. Most of the time, it's the only voice loud enough to make you move. You didn't change because things were easy. You changed because you were forced to. You adapted. You evolved. You became something new. And that only happened because staying the same started to hurt more than the fear of the unknown. Napoleon Hill once wrote, "Strength and growth come only through continuous effort and struggle." He understood what most people try to avoid. The struggle is not optional. It's essential. There's no awakening without discomfort, no power without pressure, no clarity without chaos. If you're feeling lost right now, if you're hurting, if everything feels uncertain, you're in the exact place where transformation begins. But pain doesn't knock politely. It doesn't wait for the right moment. It crashes in, uninvited. And when it does, your first instinct is to run, to distract yourself, to deny what you're feeling, to numb the ache. You scroll endlessly. You bury yourself in work. You chase anything that makes you feel momentarily alive. But avoidance only prolongs the process. You can't heal from what you refuse to feel. You can't rebuild while pretending nothing's broken. So sit with it. Sit with the ache. Not to suffer, but to understand. Pain will always teach you something about who you really are, if you let it. It will show you where you've been settling, where you've been hiding, where you've been pretending. And that's where the shift begins, in the honest confrontation with your own wounds. Ask yourself, what is this pain trying to teach me? Where is it leading me that I wouldn't have gone on my own? Often the answer is buried beneath layers of resistance.
Because part of you still believes that things should have worked out differently, that it wasn't supposed to end, that they were supposed to stay, that the plan should have gone smoother. But here's the raw truth. Your plan was too small. Your vision was too limited. And the pain had to come, not to punish you, but to pull you out of what you would have clung to forever. Think about every moment in your past when something broke you, only to reveal something better later. The job that crushed you when you lost it, but led you to something more aligned. The relationship that ended so painfully, but freed you to rediscover who you were. The opportunity that slipped through your fingers, only to be replaced by something far greater when you finally stopped chasing. Pain forces honesty. It takes the illusions off the table, and when there's nothing left to lose, you finally ask the real questions. Not, how do I get back to what I had? But, who am I becoming now that I've let it go? This is where the real transformation happens. Not when you get what you want, but when you survive what you thought you couldn't. When you realize that your worst moments didn't break you, they revealed you. That everything you were afraid to lose wasn't essential to your purpose. And the fire you were thrown into, it wasn't to burn you. It was to forge you. Because there's something sacred about breaking. It opens space. It clears the noise. It wipes the slate clean. And in that space, you begin again. Wiser, sharper, more aligned, more dangerous to the version of yourself that once lived in fear. Pain is the portal. Through it, you meet your own soul. Through it, you become someone new. Not because you wanted to, but because you had to. And that version of you, the one that rose from the ashes, is the one who can finally carry the life you've been asking for. But there's something else you need to understand. The breakthrough doesn't happen after the pain. It happens inside the pain, while you're still uncertain, while you're still healing,
while you still don't have the answers. The shift begins when you stop resisting and start listening. So don't wait until you're better to move forward. Don't wait for the fear to disappear. Walk with it. Build while you're still shaking. Trust while you're still doubting. That's what real transformation looks like. And just when you think you've endured enough, when the weight feels too heavy, when the path disappears beneath your feet, remember this: your pain is not in vain. It's not random. It's not meaningless. It's sacred. It's preparing you for what comes next. And what comes next is the kind of strength that doesn't just survive, it commands. But before you can step into that strength, you'll need one thing: the kind of faith that doesn't wait for permission. Was there a moment in this video that felt like it was meant for you? Share it below. And don't forget to subscribe. This space was created for people like you. Faith is not the absence of fear. It's the decision to move anyway. And it's not blind. Real faith sees what the eye can't. It feels what logic can't explain. It moves without proof. Not because it's reckless, but because it trusts something deeper than reason, something invisible, something unshakable. When everything outside of you screams, "Give up," real faith whispers, "Keep walking." But let's be honest, that kind of faith isn't easy, especially when nothing is working, especially when you're tired, alone, and unsure, especially when the people around you don't understand what you're holding on to. They call it denial. You call it alignment. They see a dream falling apart. You feel a future that hasn't arrived yet. And in the middle of that disconnect, you're asked to keep showing up. Napoleon Hill called this kind of belief applied faith. Not faith you talk about, faith you act on. He taught that the mind, when filled with a clear purpose and unwavering belief, becomes a magnet for the circumstances it desires. But here's the secret. The universe doesn't respond to desperation. It responds to certainty. Not the kind of certainty that comes from evidence, but the kind you choose in spite of it. Faith is not a feeling. It's a discipline. It's waking up and behaving like it's already happening. It's choosing to speak as if the doors have opened. It's moving with the energy of someone who knows they're being guided, even in silence, especially in silence. There's a kind of power that only shows up when you stop begging for signs and start becoming the sign. When you stop asking for confirmation and start walking like you've already been confirmed. That's when the shift happens. Not because the world changed, but because you did. Look back at your life. Think of the moments where you made a decision with no safety net, where you took the leap without knowing what would catch you. You weren't being reckless. You were being real. You trusted your inner knowing more than external guarantees. That's what faith looks like. It's personal. It's defiant. And it doesn't wait for permission. But we're taught to wait. Wait until we feel ready. Wait until we have enough money. Wait until we have support. But faith breaks that cycle. It says, go now, before you're ready, before you're sure, before anyone claps for you. And that kind of movement, that bold, almost unreasonable trust, is what opens invisible doors. Because the moment you align your energy with what you're asking for, things start to shift. Opportunities begin to appear. Resources begin to gather. People show up who weren't there before. Not because the universe suddenly remembered you, but because you finally started acting like someone who belongs where you're going. It's not about pretending. It's about embodying. Walking like the person who already overcame the fear. Speaking like someone who already saw the outcome. Living in the energy of what you're attracting. And every day you do that, you send a message to life. I'm ready. Napoleon Hill said, "What the mind of man can conceive and believe, it can achieve. But the missing link is always action. Not frantic action, aligned action. The kind that flows from inner certainty. That kind that says, I know who I am. I know what I'm here to do. And I refuse to live one more day like I don't believe in it." Faith doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it looks like saying no to what everyone else is saying yes to. Sometimes it's walking away from the good so you can make space for the great. Sometimes it's holding your vision in private while the world doubts you in public. And those are the moments that shape you. Not the big breakthroughs, not the applause, but the quiet choices you make when no one's watching. The inner vows, the silent promises, the unshakable knowing that even in your lowest season, something greater is on the way. And your job is to keep walking like you believe that. This is what separates those who hope for change from those who become the change. The ones who wait for life to feel better, and the ones who walk through the storm as if the sun has already returned. And yes, people will misunderstand you. They'll question your sanity. They'll call you unrealistic. That's fine, because while they're arguing with your process, you'll be building your outcome. This is not about magic. This is not about waiting for miracles. This is about becoming the kind of person miracles are drawn to. Because when your belief becomes a lifestyle, the universe has no choice but to respond. But what happens when you do everything right, walk in faith, and still, nothing happens? What do you do when your belief is strong, but life stays silent? That's where the next lesson begins. The art of trusting the invisible rearrangement. I'd love to know what part of this message spoke to your heart. Drop a comment and let's keep this conversation going. And if you're new here, subscribe. There's so much more ahead. You did everything right. You kept the faith. You stayed patient. You let go of what wasn't serving you. You stopped chasing, started healing, walked away from chaos, and chose alignment over approval. And yet, nothing seems to be happening. The silence is louder than ever. The stillness, unbearable. You start questioning yourself, wondering if you misunderstood the signs, doubting whether anything is really changing. Because from the outside, it doesn't look like transformation. It looks like abandonment. But what if this silence isn't absence? What if it's rearrangement? There's something you need to know about how the universe works. It moves in silence long before it reveals anything in sight. Just because you don't see progress doesn't mean it isn't happening. Growth is often invisible. Healing is internal. Shifts begin below the surface, like the deep tectonic plates of the earth. Silent, slow, powerful. And when they finally move, everything above them changes in an instant. But here's the challenge. The waiting room of life is where most people give up. They can't handle the quiet, the lack of proof, the days, weeks, or months, where it feels like they're pouring energy into something that's not pouring back. So they abandon the process. Not because it wasn't working, but because it wasn't loud. Napoleon Hill said, "Patience, persistence, and perspiration make an unbeatable combination for success." And yet, we forget that patience isn't just about time. It's about trust. Trusting that every closed door is closing on purpose. That every rejection is rerouting you towards something more aligned. That what you're not seeing isn't missing. It's moving. Behind the scenes. Under the surface. In ways you couldn't orchestrate if you tried. Imagine this. You plant a seed. You water it daily. You give it sunlight. For days, maybe weeks, nothing breaks through the soil. But would you dig it up in frustration, just because you can't see it growing? Of course not. You trust the process, because you know what you planted. And more importantly, you know what it's becoming. That's exactly how it works with your life. Right now, something is being positioned for you. Something that requires perfect timing, perfect conditions, and perfect alignment. You're not waiting because you're being ignored. You're waiting because your future is being arranged. Think about how many things had to shift for you to even be here. The people you met, the rooms you walked into, the chances you took or didn't take, the moments that broke you open, only to build you into someone stronger. None of that was random, and none of it was loud. The biggest changes in your life happened slowly, and then, all at once. That's what's happening again now. But the mind resists this, because the ego wants control. It wants to know, it wants updates, proof, milestones. The soul, however, doesn't need those things. It recognizes divine timing. It trusts in the architecture of the unseen. And it knows, some of the most important moves in your life will never be announced. They'll be revealed when the time is right. So how do you survive this part? How do you keep going when nothing seems to be moving? You anchor into ritual. You show up for yourself anyway. You speak life into your vision, even when no one else does. You become the evidence that something powerful is on the way, by the way you walk, the way you speak, the way you carry yourself through the quiet. Because here's the truth. You're not being tested by life. You're being trusted. Trusted to hold your vision without needing applause. Trusted to believe without needing validation. Trusted to keep building, even when the blueprint is still unclear. And that kind of trust is rare. That's why the rewards that come from it are rare too. There's a beauty in becoming someone who no longer needs external permission to keep going. Someone who doesn't beg for certainty, but moves with inner knowing. Someone who doesn't need the world to clap, because they've already heard the echo of their future calling from within. This is where true resilience is born. In the gap between intention and outcome. In the silence between your prayers and their visible answer. In the stillness where all you have is your breath, your belief, and your vision. And if you can survive that, if you can walk through the invisible rearrangement without folding, you become unstoppable. Because now, you're not just walking by faith, you are faith. You're no longer waiting for a sign. You've become the sign. And that's the moment, the precise moment, when the shift begins to manifest, quietly, powerfully, like a sunrise after the longest night. But what happens when the change finally comes? How do you receive it without sabotaging it? How do you stay aligned with the version of yourself that made it through the fire? That's the final step. And it's where everything comes full circle. The moment arrives, not with trumpets or fireworks, but in a quiet shift, an email, a phone call, a breakthrough idea that lands like lightning in your chest, a relationship that feels right in a way nothing else ever has. The fog begins to lift, and for the first time in what feels like forever, you see it. The evidence, the confirmation, the open door, the reward for every silent moment you endured. And in that moment, something inside you whispers, it was all worth it. But here's the secret most people don't talk about. Receiving the life you prayed for is just as sacred and just as challenging as surviving the storm that prepared you for it. Because when everything starts aligning, it's easy to fall back into old patterns. The ones that sabotage, the ones that shrink, the ones that question if you really deserve what's happening. And that's when your real work begins. You have to protect your growth. You have to protect your peace. You have to walk with the strength of someone who remembers what it cost to get here. Because everything you went through, every heartbreak, every delay, every moment you felt forgotten, was building the kind of person who could hold what's coming. There's a version of you that only emerges after the fire. The one that walks slower, but with deeper presence. The one that listens more, but speaks with sharper clarity. The one that no longer seeks validation, but lives from alignment. That version doesn't just want success, it embodies it. It doesn't chase love, it radiates it. It doesn't fear loss. It understands that anything meant for you cannot miss you. But that strength needs maintenance. It needs discipline. It needs you to keep choosing presence over panic, purpose over approval, intuition over impulse. Because the more you grow, the more distractions will come disguised as opportunities. And if you're not grounded in your new identity, you'll slip back into survival mode, even while standing in the very life you once begged for. So how do you stay rooted? You keep listening inward. You make stillness a daily ritual. You ask yourself every morning, am I living from fear, or am I living from vision? You don't just protect your peace, you prioritize it. You don't just practice faith, you become it. And most importantly, you remember. You remember who you were when everything was dark. You remember the strength it took to keep walking with no map. You remember the nights you cried but didn't quit. And you carry that version of you forward, not as a scar, but as a sword, a symbol of what you've survived, a reminder of what you're capable of. Napoleon Hill once said, every adversity, every failure, every heartache carries with it the seed of an equal or greater benefit. That seed is now in your hands. What you do with it is your responsibility. You can play small. You can go back to comfort. You can pretend this journey never happened. Or you can step forward, boldly, fiercely, unapologetically, and build a life that reflects the strength you fought to discover. Because you're not who you used to be. You're not broken. You're not behind. You're not lost. You're becoming. And the life that's unfolding for you now, it's not a coincidence. It's a mirror. A reflection of the energy you chose when no one else believed, of the choices you made when no one was watching, of the soul you protected when everything around you was asking you to compromise. So walk into this next season with reverence, with gratitude, with unshakable faith in the version of you that made it here. And when things begin to overflow, because they will, don't forget to stop, breathe, and say thank you to the version of yourself that didn't give up. Thank you for staying the course. Thank you for holding the vision. Thank you for being brave enough to begin again. And thank you, the listener, the believer, the dreamer on the other side of this screen. You made it to the end. And maybe in some way, this message was the confirmation you didn't know you were waiting for. If it was, leave your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear how this journey spoke to you. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe. The next video is already waiting for you, right here on the screen, and I promise, it goes even deeper. We're just getting started.